got a little nervous on a couple counts. One was when you started talking about succession planning, because we politicians don't like to think about succession planning. And then you start talking about qualifications. Fortunately, you don't have to have any credentials to be mayor at all. So that works. I don't think Jeff Espick made it here. He and I were fortunate enough to have lunch at the same place with Mark Miller yesterday, and Jeff kind of gave me a sideways look while we were talking. I realized I was the only Democrat he'd seen all week, and so he didn't quite know how to act. I want to begin just with a little housekeeping. One, you found a turnaround brochure and envelope on your place, and please, if you can, help us out with that. That's self-explanatory. As you leave, you'll see a little display, and again, through our connection with the National League of Cities, we can offer prescription drug cards to anyone who is uninsured. This is not additional insurance, but those people who just don't have prescription insurance. And to date, since we've been offering this, people in Wells County have saved over $15,000 on their prescriptions. The average is about 13% from the rack rate on the prescription. So it's worth a look. If you know of anybody that needs that help and doesn't have insurance, it's worth a look. Let me introduce to you the people who do the real heavy lifting with the city, though, and if you'll hold your applause, and you can thank them after I've read the list, but this is in no particular order. I think this is the order you registered. Meetings where there are a lot of mayors, and the most common conversation starters when mayors get together is, so how are things in, whether it's Istanbul, whether it's Indianapolis, it's how are things in Bluffton or Charlotte or whatever. And except for that rare occasion when a mayor being asked that question breaks into tears and runs uncontrollably from the room, the response usually is, well, things are okay. I think those answers are probably more reflective of an attitude of the community that some of these officials come from, rather than some sort of an objective valuation, really. It's much like, I think, the two men who were working for a shoe manufacturer and both got assigned to a territory, and they zipped out, and this was across the ocean, so they were a little apprehensive to begin with, and not long after they both arrived, one of the emails came back from one of the men who said, "This is a terrible, terrible thing you have done to me. This is a forsaken country on the edge of the earth." He says, "Nobody here wears shoes. I'm on my way back." Shortly thereafter, the second email came through from the other man who said, "This is a wonderful country. Thank you for sending me here. Nobody here wears shoes. Send me 5,000 pairs." Each of us knows that the past few years have brought challenges to our businesses, to our community, and our governments especially, and even more to the families that live in our communities. And things are certainly far from perfect in Bluffton, Indiana. But as storms come and solutions are found and the waters rise, I think we all might still agree that we are better than most. Many of our challenges have been spawned by the national economy and the global economy, and when I delivered my first State of the City address, I was lamenting the fact that our 1.7% unemployment rate made it hard for us to attract industries because we didn't have workers. Today, the latest numbers, unless Mike got some this morning, stood at 8.3%. Add to that things like our gasoline tax that funds your road and street repairs is actually less than it was 10 years ago. It's based on the number of gallons, not the price of gasoline. So we get the same amount of money whether gas is $1 a gallon or $5 a gallon. And we're getting less today than we did a decade ago, while the price of asphalt doubles. Other revenues, such as income tax and sales tax, typically have a 2 to 2.5 year lag in getting from the point of sale or the point of income into the place where we can use them. So that means our current budgets are reflecting revenues from 2008, and we know what the economy was like in 2008. But we in this community are doing even better, because even at 8.3%, our unemployment is the lowest in the region, and lower than the state, and lower than the federal government. We're fortunate to be part of a local economic development organization that's attracted over $100 million in investment in 2010 and brought nearly 100 jobs in that same time. And notice we're citing county numbers here, and that's because as a region, as a county, when one of us hurts, we all hurt. When any of our communities around us succeed, that rising tide lifts all boats as well. I believe we're doing better than most because our finances in the city are rock solid. Our underlying philosophy from all those people you saw standing a minute ago is the same. We spend less than we make, we save for big expenses rather than incur excessive debt, and we invite competitive bidding all the while looking for purchasing from local entities whenever we can. In addition, we have reduced our labor force through attrition over the past few years and are asking each one of our employees to do just a little more for the same pay. Our wellness and self-insurance program that we instituted several years ago are yielding wonderful results in that our employees have not seen a health insurance premium increase in 3 years. Our cash in the bank then also allows, yes, there are a lot of eyes rolling at this point out here, if you can stand where I am. Our cash in the bank allows us to leverage some of this cash against 80% federal funding to accomplish some of our major projects. And I've told you about these year after year, but you're going to start seeing some dirt being moved here very shortly. On Adams Street, the industrial corridor that runs along the west side of town, we're going to see construction probably yet this year. And here I want to point out that we're beginning to acquire right-of-way in Adams Street. And even though these are 80% construction projects, with the feds picking up 80 and we take the 20, right-of-way acquisition is 100% local effort. So every dollar we spend on right-of-way, we have to come up with ourselves. To which I appeal to anyone who has property along Adams Street. We certainly would solicit, if you could see fit, to donate that right-of-way that runs in front of your property, because every dollar we save there goes right into the project to make it better. Because of the large number of landowners, we don't know exactly when that's already going to be acquired, but we think it's going to happen in late fall this year. The interurban trail that connects this bridge that is still above water and will be, just as you leave, and I'll deviate from the prepared text here for a minute, Dave, but just want to give you a point of reference because people are more and more concerned about how high the water's getting. And our flood buyout program with federal money after the 2003 flood took out nearly every property in the floodplain in the city. So we really don't worry as much as we used to. But as you look out across the river today, you'll see a little gazebo, and some of you from here on can see that little gazebo in the park. In the 2003 flood, the water crested right at the floor of that gazebo. So you can see we're a long way from 2003 at this point. At any rate, the interurban trail is going to connect the footbridge across there, first phase to the Walmart, and the appraisers are going to start their work in the next few weeks. And depending on how long that takes, we have about 70 pieces of ground to obtain from sometimes absentee landowners. This could take a little while, but as soon as that last parcel is deeded to us, we're ready to let that for bids too. And as it turns out, not every city is as solid as we are financially. That means there are fewer contracts being let. The stimulus money that we saw being spread about is getting ready to dry up now. 2011 is the last year for it, so there won't be those projects funded by stimulus money. And that means that we ought to be able to get some pretty good prices from some pretty hungry contractors this year as we undertake these two projects. It's an excellent time to gather bids. And grant money is starting to dry up as well, and I don't have to tell the Parks Department, the Police Department, the Fire Department, although we did still receive in excess of $100,000 in grant money last year to fund those vital services. And all the while, with all the leverage we can apply, we still maintain the lowest city tax rate of any community, county seat city adjacent to Wells County. Let me tell you, I read these for you last year. The numbers have changed a little bit, but let me read them to you. Decatur has a tax rate of, city tax rate of 91 cents per $100. Portland $1.24. Fort Wayne $1.31. Hartford City $1.57. Marion $1.60. Huntington $2.16. Bluffton 67 cents. But I believe we can do even better. Because of Mike's efforts and the Economic Development Committee's efforts, we can look forward to becoming a foreign trade zone next year. Now that may not mean a lot to a lot of you, but if you're a business that imports and exports, it means significant tax benefits and savings right here. Our downtown continues to struggle. About a decade ago, we invited the nationally known firm of Hyatt Palma, who are the experts in downtowns, and they came into town and did an in-depth study of our downtown. They offered advice. They said it's much like going to the doctor and having a complete history and physical, and the doctor will tell you what you need to do. And like most of us, we got some of it done, and some of it we didn't get done. Like removing the tree from the courthouse plaza. Here, I wanted to try to do my best Ronald Reagan and go, Mr. Commissioner, tear down this tree. Aren't you glad I didn't do that? But as I say, some of that advice was followed, some not, and in the intervening years, the economy tanked on us. So things have changed, and it's time to bring the doctor back and look at our downtown again. This time, we've obtained another federal grant that will pay half the cost of doing this, but also with the idea not of simply revitalizing downtown, but reinventing downtown. It's also time, I think, in our city's history that we dust off those plans for a food incubator that we talked about before. Things have changed a little bit in that arena, but I think with some course corrections and some public-private money, we might be able to correct that initial plan and actually bring some new monies into the city. We can build on the plan that was fostered by this initially, and that is the culinary arts program, which at Bluffton High School is flourishing now. They took that ball and ran with it. And I think as we build on that, we'll see some successes. But also additional programs where we can partner with the school systems in our community will help bring some more economic development to Bluffton. After all, we are a county that has 3 school systems, all 3 of which the Indiana Chamber of Commerce calls Best Buys. That speaks highly of the leadership here. One of the partnerships that we have with Bluffton Harrison MSD is one that I've looked at for over a decade, and Wayne has worried about for years as well. And we're going to see that happen this year, working with Panhandle Pipeline Company as our corporate partner. This year we're going to be able to connect the sidewalk that terminates at the Panis Clinic and connect it down the south side of Spring Street to the elementary school, which will finally give these elementary kids a safe route and safe connection to our park system and our existing sidewalk grant. So we keep this up, we'll do even better. It's long overdue. But the real reason I think today that we're going to do even better in the coming year is because of the abundance of leadership in our community. Look around you and you'll see leaders that are recognized not only here in our community, but around the state and around the nation. As you look around the community, you will see this from 2010, You'll see that we are the host community for Miss Indiana State Fair, Sarah Alford. Miss Indiana, Gabrielle Reed. Mrs. Indiana, Angela McLeish. We have an award-winning Parks and Recreation Superintendent, Pam Vanderkolk, who was again recognized. Was it Bark After Dark? She comes up with these.
Dog Days of Summer.
Dog Days of Summer. I knew there was a canine reference there. But year after year after year, Pam is looked to by the Indiana Parks and Recreation and National Associations for leadership. Now there's where the beauty and brains combination stops, but we've got other leaders as well. Bob Plummer was recognized. Oh, some of you laugh. Your names are just lower down on the list. Bob was recognized this year by the state of Indiana with its Envision Award, and that recognizes a significant contribution toward achieving interoperable communications. Interoperable communications means that your public safety agencies can talk to each other, for heaven's sake, something that we expect to happen, but takes a lot of work to make it happen. And the state recognized Bob as the recognized leader in that area. Mike Rao is president of the Northeast Indiana Economic Development Officials Council. Our involvement in the United Cities and Local Governments, which is the international organization of local governments, the National League of Cities. Bluffton principal Steve Baker, I thought might be here today. I don't see Steve. Is he not here today? But Steve is the president of the Indiana Association of School Principals this year. I said years ago that our leadership brings us a seat at the table, but today we can say not only do we have a seat at the table, we have a seat at the head table when decisions are made and policies are set aside. These people that I mentioned that you saw standing, and many others I know of you, are servant leaders, true servant leaders, but examples not only come from those at the head table. They come from people who are truly out there with boots on the ground. I wanted to bring one of our city workers by the name of Dave Robinson here, and Dave, I would have had to drag him. We literally had to cuff him and drag him, tase him maybe, and get him. And Dave conveniently is on vacation for the next 2 days. But I still want to tell you about David, because he is one of those guys that while you're still sleeping is out plowing snow into your driveway. People think that's the first thing we do, then we clear the streets, but that's not true. Dave is literally out there while we're all still sleeping. And at 5:30 in the morning on January the 19th, after one of the biggest snowstorms we've had, Dave is out doing what he does, and that is plowing the snow off the streets so you can get to work. He'd done that many, many times before. This time was different. Dave sees his job as a little more than just moving snow, but also in looking out for the neighborhoods that he serves. Because he was alert, he spotted one of our citizens who had gone out in the morning and fallen and broken her hip and was lying in the snow. This is at 5, and she, as near as we can tell, she'd been there for half an hour in the snow at 5:30 in the morning. Now, I won't tell you who she is for HIPAA reasons, and no pun intended. But Dave stopped, quickly radioed for help, and we got somebody out there and got her patched up. His quick action on that day probably saved serious consequences, or even worse. That wouldn't happen everywhere, but it happened here. And that's why I believe we'll continue to do even better, because this spirit permeates every person sitting here, every aspect of our community. A long time ago, I cut my political eye teeth working for the Robert Kennedy presidential campaign. Some of you will have to lean over to a gray head or somebody with no hair, and they can explain who Robert Kennedy was. Not long before he was assassinated, he said this, and I believe it to be more true today. He says, "Few of us will have the greatness to bend history, but each of us can change a small portion of events. And in the total of those changes will be written the history of our generation." As each of us looks around, let us change just a small portion of events, and our city's history will reflect that we can do even better. Thank you very much.